Hello and welcome to this week's featured film in our continuing Beyond the Bay virtual film series. My name is Kevin Maher and I'm a member of the programming committee at the Bay Theater in Suttons Bay, Michigan. This week's featured film is American Graffiti from 1973, co-written and directed by George Lucas. The film was released by Universal Studios on August 1st of 1973 and has been hailed as the quintessential film about the cruising culture of the early 1960s. Set in Modesto, California, Lucas's hometown, American Graffiti focuses on four recent high school graduates the night before two of them are to leave for college. The film stars Ron Howard, Richard Dreyfuss, Cindy Williams, Paul Lamont, Candy Clark, and Charles Martin Smith. Before I talk about American Graffiti, however, let's talk about a world where Star Wars does not exist. No movies with billions of dollars in box office receipts, no bed sheets, toy figurines, drinking cups, or lightsabers. No Jedis, no Death Star, no X-Wing fighters or Yoda. No dark side, and no Force. Without American Graffiti and a faulty seatbelt, that galaxy far, far away would quite likely have been nothing but a dream in George Lucas's mind. His first film, THX 1138, had been a dismal flop. He had disappointed the studio that had made it, he had strained his relationship with Francis Ford Coppola, who had helped produce it, and at the time was the most powerful filmmaker. More importantly, however, Lucas had alienated his audience by making a cold and unapproachable movie that nobody at the time cared for. Lucas had grown up south of San Francisco in the town of Modesto, where he cultivated his love of fast cars, cruising, and drag racing. Just before his high school graduation, Lucas's Italian sports car was broadsided, flipping it several times before it hit a tree. Fortunately for Lucas, he had had a roll bar installed just weeks before, and his seatbelt snapped, ejecting him from the car and saving his life. As he recovered from his injuries, he lost interest in auto racing and turned to his other passion, science fiction and fantasy stories. He spent 2 years in junior college before transferring to USC's renowned film school, where he met Steven Spielberg, John Milius, and Walter Murch, among others who would help shape film history for the next 50 years. After the failure of THX 1138, Lucas was challenged by his wife and others to make a film that would emotionally involve an audience. Believing the task would be quite simple, Lucas enlisted screenwriters Gloria Katz and Willard Huyck to write a 15-page treatment about Lucas's stories of cruising the streets of Modesto during high school. Then Lucas would then shop to the studios. Every studio turned him down, citing his previous track record or the subject matter of the film. Without money and without financing, Lucas decided to write the screenplay himself and persuaded Universal Studios to put up $600,000 to make the film, provided Lucas could find a name actor to appear. Failing to attract anyone of note, Lucas turned to his estranged friend Francis Ford Coppola, who Lucas blamed for THX's failure. Coppola agreed to produce, with Universal even adding another $175,000 to the budget. Academy Award-winning producer Fred Roos agreed to help cast the film and spent 5 months scouring the ranks of young actors to come up with the group of unknowns who would go on to great fame. He had produced The Andy Griffith Show, so Ron Howard was well known to him. But at the time, Howard was struggling to escape his childhood image. Candy Clark, who would go on to be nominated for an Academy Award for her portrayal of Debbie, was a model who had never appeared in a film. And Richard Dreyfuss was a bit actor on TV series in the late 60s. Finally, Harrison Ford, who plays Bob Felfa, had to be coaxed away from a lucrative career as a carpenter to appear in the film. Shooting began in June of 1972 in San Rafael, California, because Modesto had changed too much in the intervening 10 years to look like a 1962 backdrop. After one night of shooting, however, San Rafael kicked the production out of town, so they relocated 20 miles north to Petaluma and shot for 28 straight nights from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m., with the entire cast living together in a local motel. The film was shot in sequence, with the exception of the sock hop scene, which was shot in one night. Because of the age disparity of the cast, Mackenzie Phillips, who played Carol, was only 12 years old, and Harrison Ford was nearly 30, there were lots of downtime issues that included public drunkenness, a hotel room fire, and an injury to Richard Dreyfuss that included stitches and is actually evident in several of the scenes if you look closely. More than 300 pre-1962 cars were used for the shoot, with many of the cars' owners actually driving their own cars. Bob Felfa's car was the same car used in the 1971 film Two-Lane Blacktop, starring James Taylor and Warren Oates. Lucas felt that each of the main characters' car reflected their personality, and each of their personalities represented Lucas at a certain period of his life. As Lucas wrote the script, he imagined a specific song for each scene and wrote that scene around the song. Initially, there would have been almost 80 songs in the film, but securing rights and the length that it caused Lucas to reduce the number of songs to 43, with 41 appearing on the Triple Platinum soundtrack album. Noticeably absent are the songs of Elvis Presley because they were too expensive, even though more than 10% of the film's budget went towards song rights. Lucas wanted to create wall-to-wall music for the film, but pay close attention to how sound is used throughout, with the volume increasing and decreasing depending on the needs of the scene. Radio disc jockey Wolfman Jack creates the thread throughout the film that connects different scenes and different places. He was famous in the early 1960s for broadcasting from a pirate radio station in Mexico and would have been a natural as a DJ on air in 1962. Lucas's first cut of the film was nearly 3 hours long, but that was never shown to studio heads. Instead, they were invited to a preview showing on January 28, 1973 in San Francisco. While the packed audience loved the film, studio brass hated it so much they deemed it unreleasable. Coppola whipped out his checkbook and offered to buy the film, telling executives they should be down on their knees thanking Lucas for creating such a wonderful film. Universal was comfortable removing 3 scenes from the film and proceeding towards a summer release, however. Later, Lucas forced Universal to put the scenes back in the film, and every subsequent iteration of the film includes those scenes. Reviews for the film were mostly positive, but the box office results were astonishing, with more than $115 million during its first release year, making American Graffiti one of the most profitable films ever made. Within 3 months of finishing American Graffiti, Lucas was in the offices of 20th Century Fox pitching a film about spaceships and imaginary creatures, securing a deal based on early screenings of American Graffiti. Studio head Alan Ladd Jr. famously said, "I want to be in business with you, kid," and the deal was struck. Lucas would go on to direct just 6 more films, and none outside the Star Wars franchise, and his legacy is primarily built around Star Wars' success. But Lucas saved his career while proving a point to his wife that would serve him well later by making a little film called American Graffiti. Please join us for our live Q&A discussion of American Graffiti on July 2nd at 7:30 Eastern. If you would like more information, please go to our website at thebaytheater.com. Thanks for watching and enjoy the film.